No, that scream didn't occur when I hit the alien.
All right.
After we had basically examined the alien 3 days after bringing it back, I had gone into the garage to put some things away, and I noticed that there was a sound underneath the freezer. At the time, I thought it was the compressor possibly going out. I thought about rats, and I thought about if it was either one, I'd probably have to move this body and clean out my refrigerator. But as I looked closer, there were no rats, and the compressor seemed to be working. But I still heard a sound, a scratching sound, almost a thump scratching sound. And it was coming from inside the freezer.
This is where I personally would begin to have a problem. If I heard that, there is no way on God's green earth that I would go and open that freezer. But that's what you did, isn't it?
Well, it happened very quickly. I was actually angry because I had set up an appointment for a friend to come over and look at the body to do a more intense examination. And that examination was canceled without any reason, and no reason given, and it was done in such a way that I knew there was either somebody had gotten to this other person or he was afraid. And I was very angry. I was very frustrated. And so I was literally putting things away in frustration and was angry, and at the time I heard this noise, I wasn't thinking about anything. And I opened the lid of the freezer, and I could see that it was moving. It had actually opened the top of the thermal blanket, and the arm was moving across the side of the inside of the freezer. I slammed the door of the freezer and ran like hell into the house.
Now that I would have done. Had I been foolish enough to open the door, had I seen what you saw and heard what you heard, maybe that'd be it. I mean, this thing by then had been in the freezer how long?
At that point, approximately 3 days.
You know, somebody called me earlier today. This has been, I think, coffee table conversation now for days since our last interview.
Everywhere.
Everywhere is right. And somebody said, oh, come on. There's no way that the creature would be alive after being in the freezer. However, what do we know about this creature's physiology? Nothing.
Absolutely nothing.
Absolutely nothing. So for all we know, it might have liked the cold.
And also, we do know that there are creatures on our Earth that can survive all winter long in the Antarctic, in the freezing cold.
Hibernating, that's true.
Well, not only hibernating, but, being alive and well and feeding. Penguins experience, 30, 40 below zero.
It's true.
We don't know if that suit as well was some kind of protection. The suit, as you recall, not only did it heal, but when he later tried to cut it again, it disallowed him from doing it by wrapping itself around him. So we know that the suit learns and can aggressively defend itself and therefore its host as well.
So, Doctor, when did you hear that scream?
Well, after a few hours had gone by and I had called Gary back, and he had calmed me down from crawling practically around the ceiling, we both went out to look again. And I figured, we went out and looked. We did the same thing. I opened the freezer so that I could know that I was not imagining this. And the same thing happened. And when the freezer was opened, this thing let out a scream like I have never heard before. It literally, the force of the sound made you feel like something was pushing against your chest?
The air around it as it screams actually bubbles and moves.
It felt like the air was moving.
God.
And at that time, it was just, open and closed. And later on, I felt like I had to try to document this.
Of course.
So I took my camera and I took the recorder and I turned it on and I again opened the freezer, and that's when I recorded this sound.
Would you play the sound for us once again, please?
Yes, I will. Hold on.
Okay. Here it comes. Oh, my God, that's awful. Oh, God, that's awful. How did you stay dry?
I didn't.
Yeah, well, that's a good answer. All right. Now, let's rush forward. So you slam the door again, obviously. Back in the freezer it goes. You're being followed. By now you've notified any number of people that you've got this creature.
Gary and I tried to call a lot of different places to find out what possibly could do.
What you could do.
Right. Gary had taken kind of control of things since I was so sick. I couldn't work. I couldn't, I was still very, very ill. And we decided that we needed to gather some information to decide what kind of strategy to do. And as we did that, we started to notice that people were semi-watching us being followed.
Well, obviously, notifying a number of people, you probably finally hit upon one who notified somebody who decided you had something you shouldn't have.
Right. And all the time, I kept saying, oh, this is a bunch of bunk. This stuff doesn't really happen. People aren't really following us. But they were. And it was happening.
What kind of vehicles?
Dark blue vans, very, very dark blue, not black, but dark blue. Either no license plates or license plates that were some type of military plate. One van followed us for about 15, 20 miles that looked literally like a porcupine because it had so many antennas across the top of it. This was an endless process.
One of them actually tried to run you off the road, didn't it?
Two of them have tried to run us off the road.
Really?
And almost successfully.
Matter of fact, they at one point also tried to run Gary off the road, but they pulled out in the last second. Otherwise, he more than likely would have been killed.
We started doing things independently. We figured, two bodies better than one. And I would go one direction and talk to, people. He would go the other, and we would later meet up and try to make some decisions on where to go. But to be completely honest, all this was happening so quickly that we didn't get very far before we encountered people who basically knew what was going on. I believe they either had heard through other sources that we had contacted that we had something, or possibly maybe both also tapping our phones. I don't know.
All right. You called me. I called you the other day because I had said last week we're going to do a follow-up on this program. No way, we're leaving it where it is. You've got the negatives to these photographs.
Yes.
We're going to have you contacted and process those with your permission. Unfortunately, we cannot get the alien's body or the alien, it may be alive, because somebody else got it. You came home, your home was trashed, and not just the alien, but the entire freezer was gone, correct?
Correct. Yeah, they had ransacked my house. They had taken all my files that didn't pertain to anything to do with this. I mean, books that I had saved for years, school books, school papers. It had been turned upside down and backwards. There were holes cut out of the walls. I don't know what they were looking for, but...
Holes cut out of the walls?
Yes. In the ceiling, there were holes. There were holes in the floor. And finally I walked to the garage. Now, this was after a day later, after I had seen the vans at the house.
Right.
And I walked to the garage. The garage door had literally been taken off its hinges, pried literally out of the wall.
And the freezer?
And the freezer was gone.
Gone. Hold on, Doctor. We're at the bottom of the hour. We'll be right back. This is Coast to Coast AM. Well, all right, gentlemen, we're back on the air again. Before we do go to the phones, is there anything that either one of you wants to get out that hasn't been said that should be said?
Robert?
Well, I'd like to say you asked me earlier about the book.
Sure.
The book is pretty much, it's done. It's the text. We're just going over, making sure that it's perfect. And the book will have photographs in it. And fingers crossed, we're talking to people now, and we'll get it out as soon as we can.
Mm-hmm.
The details of the story that we're talking about, we've talked about maybe 1/5 of what happened.
1/5 of what happened. In other words, there's an awful lot of detail in between the chronology you gave us.
Absolutely.
It would take days to go over everything that actually happened.
It took almost a year to basically decipher everything and put it on paper.
Have you seen the rescan photos I put up this morning?
Yes, I have.
Do they accurately represent the photographs?
Yes, they do, without any doubt.
Okay, good.
They're beautiful.
Do you understand that there are a lot of people who are going to view this, even though the photographic evidence is heavy, even though there's a videotape that I have seen they haven't, they're going to view this as a hoax. What do you say to those people?
I say to those people, that's okay. You know, they can believe what they want. This is my story of what happened to me, and all I can say is I am bringing this out for everyone to see. I can no longer sit on this and stay in the shadows. It's time everybody see this and decide for themselves. You know, there are too many secrets, and for too long, people have been telling us this didn't happen or that didn't happen, and you need to think this way. Well, I think it's time we stand up and take back some of our rights to view things the way they are and see the truth for what it is.
When I called you the other day to reschedule the shows, I was saying you were in a dead, flat panic. Something terrible was going on or had gone on since you were on the air with me last week. Can you talk about that at all?
Well, my attorney has advised me not to talk about that at this time due to the fact that it involves some innocent people.
Okay. Whatever it was had you scared.
Basically, I was not going to come back on the air. In fact, I had almost decided, due to what had happened, not to go ahead with the book. But I think people need to judge for themselves.
Oh, they will. There are a lot of people who look at these photographs, and it's funny how you get complaints. A lot of times you'll see a picture of a craft or something or another, and people say it's all fuzzy. I don't believe it. In the case of these photographs, they're too good. We don't believe it. How could they have been that good? How could the doctor have paused carefully enough to take such good quality photographs?
They just came out good, and I'm glad they did, because it's about time somebody come forward with something.
All right. I'm going to go to the phones, and we'll see what we get. And we don't screen calls, so we're liable to get anything. And I know, Robert, since you have done the documentation, you may want to respond to some of these, too. So let's see what we get. On our first-time caller line, you're on the air with Dr. Reed and Robert Wraith. Hi.